What's up, everybody? How's it going, founders and creators? How are we doing tonight? Yes! That is such a good response. I love it. Wow, this is awesome. Well, I can't believe we're finally here. It's week 8, and it's our final. I know, that's exactly right. There's a sense of sadness, but there's also a sense of accomplishment. And of course, we'll talk more about that over the next few minutes, but it's been so fun, and we really are so honored that you guys joined us on the journey. So we have a little bit of a special treat for you tonight. We are actually recording a live podcast as we speak.
Come on.
So CJ and I have kind of alluded to starting this podcast, so I thought I'd give you guys just a quick context of how this thing happened. So when Eric first approached us about doing Founders and Creators, we began to build the curriculum, and we're going through all this stuff, and we're going, oh my God. We have a lot more conversation that needs to take place that would extend way past 8 weeks worth of curriculum. And so CJ and I just said, like, hey, we should do a podcast and just invite people into the conversation. And then, of course, ultimately our goal is to help people take meaningful action towards their dreams. Well, Eric graciously offered to join us. And so what we ended up doing is, as we were doing Founders and Creators, the next day, so obviously we meet on Tuesday nights, the next day on Wednesdays, we would meet and record a podcast and then invite Eric into the conversation, get his perspective on the topic from the night before. And so what will be neat is, as we release the podcast, which is called Mavericks and Pioneers, you guys will get the opportunity to kind of revisit the conversation, but with Eric's perspective, which I think is super cool. Can we give a hand for Mr. Eric Johnson?
Come on.
Go ahead, you have to do it. You're not gonna do it? He's not gonna do it. There's an inside joke, but you'll find it. You have to watch the podcast to know what he was gonna allude to. So yeah, we're super excited. Like I said, it's a live podcast tonight, and we'll tell you more about it, but I'll let CJ take it from here.
Sweet. We are honestly really excited that this is week 8, in that we have been able to watch you all grow in ways, and the conversations we've had with you has been so powerful and so exciting. And thank you for those of you that have specifically come up to all 3 of us and shared your story, shared the progress, shared the idea, shared the breakthrough, shared what was brewing now as a result of having these small group breakouts and thinking through these topics. We are here for that. Stephen and I specifically, I'm not going to say Eric does, just kidding, Eric does. We love seeing people come alive. Yeah. Watching people wake up to who they are and who they were meant to be, regardless of age, regardless of background, regardless of experience, regardless of education, all the stuff the world wants to say is important. Putting that aside and saying, now's my time, I'm going to go. So we started with introducing ourselves real quickly. We moved into loving yourself or respecting yourself and why that was so important. We then moved into risk and why risk is so important. All those biblical heroes that we all love and admire, the big theme in their lives is risk. And that's really why we love them. But then we got to look in the mirror and go, crud, I got to do that now, right? It's my turn. It's my time. This is my opportunity to move forward in risk. And then we tied that into mission, as you guys remember. It gave you guys some practical steps to discuss mission. And then finally brought in marketing. And 2 weeks of marketing last week with my wife, Lindsay, kind of helping us lead the way there.
Wait, I just got to, real quick. Was last week, so I listened to it. We were in the Caribbean, so we weren't here. And there's a little shout out. But I listened.
We call that humble brag.
Yeah, humble brag. That's what I'm like, it's in the Caribbean, but it's no big deal. And I listened, and I was like, oh my God. Was that not so awesome? Can we just clap for Lindsay McPhail? Didn't she do just an amazing job? If you were not able to come last week, you have got to go back and hear it. It was so incredibly practical and helpful. I had to brag on Lindsay for a second. That was so awesome.
Thank you. I'll let her know you said that. What Steve and I want to really emphasize to you guys is one of the things that I was really grateful to Eric for, because Eric saw our outline and we kind of had a lot of dialogue long before we released this or even talked about it publicly, is Steve and I really had this heart to first help people dive into the emotional side of entrepreneurship. And it's a frustration for me that not enough people take the time to realize what it's going to take from you emotionally to go down this journey. Not that it's not doable, it's fully doable, but to have your eyes wide open to how you're going to feel, the fear you're going to feel. That's a hard one to say. All those emotions that start to come out, to have an opportunity to say, I've got to respect myself enough. I realize this is going to require risk. I need a mission. And to start to go through that and then dive into the practical sides of, of marketing and all the questions. And we're looking forward to answering some questions tonight. We did that by design. We're very grateful. I haven't seen it done exactly that way before, where business people talked about the emotional end. And I'm really proud of you guys because you went on the journey with us. We all knew, we were kind of wondering, what are these guys going to say? And we started talking about loving yourself, like, ooh, okay, and respecting yourself. But you guys were awesome. So we just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for this journey. And Eric, I want to ask you, what does Founders and Creators mean to you as pastor, as a leader in this community, and why is it so important to you?
Yeah, so before I answer that, I want to take a moment and honor these two guys. There you go.
Thank you.
I honestly think we could do better.
Caribbean, yeah. Thanks for clapping. I'm going to give you another opportunity to clap in just a minute.
Yeah.
I had the easy part. I got this idea, this dream of creating a space for entrepreneurs to gather, and met with Stephen first, and then he pulled in CJ. And these guys spent a lot of time putting together the 8 weeks. This wasn't just a fly by the seat of the pants. And they sent me the notes for the first 3, and I thought, oh, they're serious. Like, this is a really serious thing. And so I just want to give you guys honor and respect for that, and to say thanks for helping to kick off this idea that we want to see, not just for studio, but for Greenville, for the upstate, and potentially beyond that. And you guys, the time that you put into it, the energy you put into it, the emotions, all your own stories and history and all that. So I just want to publicly give you honor and respect, and to say thank you. And I know I've talked to many of you, how you appreciated their stories and their journey. So why don't we give them another great round of applause as a thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
It really has been so much fun.
It has.
And it's such an honor. We were genuinely honored that you asked us and gave us the opportunity, and of course took it seriously. But I will tell you guys, and I have to say this, like it would not have near the impact that I believe that it has if you guys did not show up week after week and be willing to get vulnerable, transparent, share with one another, engage, stay after, sometimes for hours after we finish meeting, just to connect with one another, encourage one another, hear each other's stories. And so as much as I appreciate the honor, I really would like to honor you guys, because I'm convinced that's made all the difference in the world. I think half of this course was you guys connecting with each other, and the other half was curriculum. So thank you guys so much. I think you should give yourselves a round of applause one more time, just for yourselves.
When does it end?
It doesn't.
It's like when you repost somebody's thing. I'm going to repost it. We're going to keep reposting it. It's like, who's going to end the cycle? So to answer your question, what did this mean? The heart really is, I know from my own life, when someone believes in you, that goes a long ways. Yeah. And I think for me, just being a spiritual community where we have this deep passion to follow Jesus well, and to see what he wants to see happen on earth happen. And so for me, I just know that when we have a spiritual community like that, what an opportunity to find like-minded people in the midst of that. Yeah. And I have this deep conviction that the space of entrepreneurship, economy, and business is really integral to the future of any city. It's evident, but for some reason, I carry a burden for it in this context here. So for me, the whole idea of gathering entrepreneurs, and now what has become Founders and Creators, and we'll share a little bit later potentially about what we're thinking kind of after this, what we're kind of some things that we're kind of ideating around. So this was never meant to just be 8 weeks and, all right, guys, have a great life. This is supposed to be kind of an initiation into creating a culture here, as well as a community of people, a sub-community of people. And I realize some of you in this room are not from studio, and we're so glad you've joined us for the last 8 weeks, and really just want to be a resource to the region, to the area. So what it's meant for me is it's a space to, hey, we believe in entrepreneurship, and we believe in business, we believe in economy, and we believe we are designed to create wealth. We are designed to have ideas and see them come into fruition. And so for me, I just wanted to create a space where we start that conversation. And and this is not a critical thing at all, I don't know that many churches that give a lot of emphasis to this. So I was like, well, let's just do it. And there's a lot of things we'll have to kind of figure out down the road. Like, well, what do we do about the intersection there? I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when it comes. Yeah. But in the meantime, let's create a community of people and let's gather people and let's just flip this switch and let's see what happens. Cool. And anyways, I could go on and on, but that's what it's meant to me. I love seeing the passion, the intentionality of you two, and then seeing all you guys come week after week. And I look around the room, some of you are very accomplished in this area of entrepreneurship and running businesses and running organizations. I just love the fact that you have chosen to be a part of this. And I believe what's formed is a community of people that are excited about the endless possibilities of the idea that are sitting inside of us. And that excites me the most, is that right there.
And I'll say this, Lindsay and I come, and my family comes to the first service. And what a thrill it is to see you all now. It's like a whole nother family, that I get to walk into. And I'm watching on just this past Sunday, I'm watching quite a few of you interact with each other, on cross conversations. And that to me is thrilling, to see this whole new community popping up within the community. And to watch whatever is going to happen with that, whatever Holy Spirit's going to do with that, is going to be a thrill. So, Eric, thank you for, the vision and allowing this to take place from your perspective, because I think you're right. It doesn't have to be a criticism, but you just don't see this in this space as often, I think, as it needs to be. And let's change that, right? Let's change that now, and that's what we're doing.
So good. Love it. Yeah, that's so awesome. So tonight, what we thought we would do to wrap up is address some kind of the lingering questions that you all have presented to us. So just a quick reminder, when you first signed up for Founders and Creators, we had an intake form, and there were 2 questions that each of you answered, which, by the way, I still can't believe we had 140 people sign up. It's just amazing, so neat. But the 2 questions were this: what are you hoping to get out of this course? And then also, what is your biggest pain point when you consider starting a business? And so what we did is that, of course, helped inform some of the curriculum that we put together, but also we drew from those questions. And then alongside that, as we've had one-on-one conversations, and thankfully we've had the opportunity to meet with some of you, get lunch, get coffee, and just talk. And so we hear reoccurring themes. And so we just picked out about 4 or 5 of those questions tonight, and we just wanted to kind of rapid fire answer them. Again, these are questions directly from you guys, and hopefully they'll be super practical and helpful. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Yes. All right, so let's do it. So the first one, and I like this question a lot because it is immensely practical, and I think I've heard this one, I would say, at least a dozen times. And so the first question that you all presented to us was, how do you determine the pricing structure for your product or service? And so I think each of us have an idea. Don't. CJ, I'm going to kick it to you first because I see mischief in Eric's eyes.
I'll save you. Well, this is a great question. I know it came from some of you. Anybody raise your hand if this is a question you've had? Can I just see kind of a show of hands from your perspective? So, the answer is going to be it depends, right? The most annoying answer on the planet Earth. But it does depend on the context of your business and your mission and what it is that you're working to accomplish. So I'm going to speak to coffee and specifically drive-through coffee, because actually there's nuance between those. For us, our pricing structure is going to be based on profitability. It's going to be based on, from a marketing perspective, what price points can we allow that can be much less, where we're going to have less revenue, but it's going to be a driver for people coming into our stand to get introduced to the rest of our menu, right? None of this is rocket science. We always aim for 100% markup margin minimum, and we're pretty good at maintaining that. We're certainly not across the board everything. And I'll just be transparent. It's not a secret, really. A cold brew for us is an area that we can really offer at a much lower price point and bring people in. The cold brew is very popular, and a lot of people like it. Drip coffee is another one where it's a real low price point for us to get people in. If you guys like drip, and I personally drink drip every morning, it's what I go to. We get a lot of people in the morning that just want drip, and that's a lower price point. But we can also introduce them to some of our other products, our blended drinks right now as the weather starts to warm up, especially, for example. And those items are going to be at a much higher price point and a minimum of 100% market margin because the market allows it, and I believe the product's worth it. And our customers so far for the last 5 years are saying, yeah, we agree with that.
CJ,
cool.
Can you describe for them, because you mentioned you had some friends that owned like a grocery store, and what they did kind of to lower the barrier of entry to get people kind of in the door, similar to what you just described, but I thought that was a really good analogy to kind of get people there.
Yeah, and I think this is true. We do have some friends in Southern Oregon that are wildly successful with owning a grocery store chain. But we've talked to them many times, and milk and bread, no joke, for them, even in 2024, are their two items. They actually lose money on milk. The last I knew, they were losing 25 to 50 cents per gallon. They were paying in to sell you that gallon of milk. And they were more than happy to do so. And bread was a similar margin. I don't want to quote it. I don't remember exactly. But it was a loss for most of their bread items. We're talking hot dog buns, hamburger buns, loaves of bread, a loss. And you say, why? Because the minute that you're in buying milk and getting bread, you're remembering that your kids, if you have kids like I do, you're getting those snacks. And my gosh, we have the barbecue this weekend, and pretty soon you need the Doritos, because who can live without those? And no one can eat just one.
And milk is in the back of the store.
And milk's in the back of the store. That's right. Exactly. I should have mentioned that. Thank you. You're helping me out. So from a price point perspective with a grocery chain or a grocery store, in most cases, I think most of them are similar. They are not afraid to take a loss in order to get you in the door.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty smart. Now, also remember, I was just in a grocery store in Pendleton, South Carolina called Food Lion. I don't know if you guys have been to Food Lions. They're around the upstate. It is amazing to me how they're starting. Now, I geek out on this stuff, so some of you may not. But I'm amazed at all the little sales racks that you now walk into, just even as you're getting your cart at Food Lion. And the marketing and the flyers and the little trinkets. And literally in Food Lion in Pendleton, if you walk in right now, at least it was this way yesterday, you can buy iPhone charger cables right there. Right? So on your way to get your gallon of milk that they're going to take a loss on, they're selling you iPhone charger cables all the way up to the newest Frito-Lay display, all the way back. And to Eric's point, now you're eventually going to wind yourself back to the milk counter and then find yourself spending $200 when you thought you were just going to spend $3. And that's how it works.
I've seen people do that even in photography. Like they'll have like a little basic package that's like super affordable. And so a lot of times people come for like an initial shoot, but if you do well, you can kind of hook a customer for life. And now they want you for such and such anniversary or this event, whatever it is. And then of course on that stuff, you generally make a lot more money. And so it's not a bad idea to have some things of bread and butter, I think, that kind of get people in the door that are priced really competitively. For me, when I'm thinking about pricing, you guys know I own a bearing company, so our margins aren't near as high as what he described, but the dollar amounts are a lot more. So, he's selling a $5, $6, cup of coffee. Our average order is probably $1,000, $2,000. It can be upwards of $50,000, $100,000. That's rare. Always really nice when it happens. But like if I have a $50,000 order, I might be happy with 15-20% profit. Because obviously, if you're making 20% on 50 grand, that's what, $10,000 you just pocketed. It's like, hey, who wants to make $10,000 in a single transaction? That sounds pretty nice. And so the way that I think about pricing is the first thing that I want to evaluate is what I consider like fair market value. And so I look around at competitors, and I also look around, like in my example, I have access to information where all these major manufacturers, they publish kind of what they call distributor cost. And this is what all major distributors are purchasing their bearings at. And so if I'm aware of that information, then I know how to price things accordingly, right? And so in my instance, because I'm selling wholesale, generally I want to at least match that price, if not do a little bit better. And if I can give my customer a 10, 20, 30% discount and still make a nice margin, it's kind of a win-win. So you see how it's a little bit subjective. And so one thing I would say is be aware of what a fair market value is. If you want to start a business where you're pressure washing sidewalks and the average home is $1,000, you probably don't want to quote $8,000. Now I'm just making up numbers right now. But maybe you would quote $1,200, or maybe you would quote $1,500 based on the value that you provide or the service that you would provide. And so the final thing that I would say as it relates to pricing, and this is a big one for me, Most new entrepreneurs tend to undersell themselves.
That's good. That's true.
Almost everybody that I talk to are not charging enough money for their product or service. I would say like 95 out of 100 conversations I've had. And I think this is what is behind that. You're afraid.
Yeah.
Right? You're thinking, I have a family to take care of. I've got to sell something. So I'm going to price this job so competitively that I'm going to kill the competition. Well, that's a problem for a couple reasons. The first thing is you're actually hurting the market. That is a short-term solution that will create a long-term problem. Because now that same customer comes back to you 6 months later wanting that kind of pricing. Well, what if the cost of labor has gone up or the cost of materials? And again, this is all variable, for the industry. But you're also hurting the competition because now they're having to lower their prices. So it's actually a lose-lose in the long run. But the other thing is what you're really telling people is what you think you are worth. Or what you think your product is worth. And so it sounds smart. The logical thing says, well, yeah, if I have a better price, they'll buy it from me. Well, a lot of times, actually, you're really telling them what you're providing is cheap.
That's right.
And so I would say, especially as kingdom people, we need to be supplying products and services that we are deeply proud of. Yeah. Not just because of our service, but we actually believe in what we're selling, that the quality of what we're doing is admirable, it is reliable, it's trustworthy. And if that's the case, then your customers can expect to pay a premium.
That's right. And that ties into, Stephen, as you know, and Eric, loving yourself and respecting yourself, right? So I think a lot of these answers, you're going to see some of these themes that we brought up in these last 8 weeks and why they were important. So I absolutely agree with that. You've got to get yourself to a point. Now, we do 100% plus. And one of the things that it does, I just want to say this out loud because I just got hit between the eyes hard yesterday with this exact conversation, is it helps you ride inflation, okay? There's a lot about the pricing in the world right now that none of us can fully predict, but we do need to be as prepared for as we possibly can. So a good example, and I'm not exaggerating, for my coffee buddies in here, you know this, but coffee is right now at an all-time high. Green coffee, buying green coffee. In fact, I bought an order 3 weeks ago, and it was a $5,500 order, and for just slightly more, I just paid $7,100 because the market went up 50 cents per pound. 50 cents per pound. It's the single highest price increase that this company has seen. And I order from a company in New Jersey. It's the single highest price they've seen in 17 years. Now it's already back down, which kind of hurts my heart. I'm like, I should have waited a day, but I had to order. So I ended up, for me, just so you know, that 50 cents ended up being about $980 more than the previous order 3 weeks earlier. Now, we're at a pricing point, here's my point. We're at a pricing point where, yes, that's a bummer, but it's not devastating, okay? It's not gonna crush us.
That's a good point, yeah.
It is not gonna crush us. And I see some people price themselves at a point where if that were to happen to them, they're like, not sure they're gonna make the mortgage. Wow. That is not where we wanna be, okay? Eric, what are your thoughts there?
Well, the answer to that question for me, what determined pricing for product and service, my situation is a little different. Tithing is is what determined, and it's
turn off the cameras. We're done. Get them out of here. You're done.
It's a principle that had been instituted thousands of years ago, so we've kind of just stuck to that. I don't want to mess with that. I don't want to go below it.
Immediate regret.
I'll go above it.
That's right.
But so I didn't determine that price point. That was someone that was transcended.
That's not greedy either, is it? I mean,
No.
that's a modest margin.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Holiness.
So I'm going to put a period because I could keep going and it would be even funnier but very awkward. So anyway.
Make it awkward.
But I do want to share something. I had a friend who was a photographer and she was charging an X amount. I think it was I forget the amount, but it was about 50% less than what the other photographers in the area were doing. And she actually was winning awards like the best in the North State. This was in California, best in the North State. So she was really good. And all the other photographers were getting upset with her. So they approached her, I think individually, I don't think collectively. And they were really saying, you're making it impossible for us because your price point is half of what we're charging. And she thought, and at the end of the day, she came to us, talked to us about it. At the end of the day, it all came down to her own self-value.
Yes.
Yes.
So for her, she thought, the facade was, oh, I'm just helping people. She had all the language for it. And if that's true, then that's great. But that wasn't the truth. The truth was she didn't think she was valuable enough, so she just dropped the price down to her value point. So I think what you guys are saying, and I was just remembering that story. So eventually it took some identity healing for her to get where it should be. And so it's an interesting part of the story in the journey.
That's such a great example. I love that. Thank you. And it also brings me back to the talk on money. Because a lot of hang up that you see with believers is they are afraid to make money. And I'm going, from my perspective, I'm thinking there's all these things that we want to accomplish for the kingdom of God. Many of those things are going to require money. Yeah. And it's like, so on the one hand, it's like, well, we're supposed to sow into missions and provide clean water for the nations, which will take millions and billions of dollars, but we're worried about making a profit margin. Mm-hmm. And so there is an internal tension that we experience. And I just want to say, just a reminder, money's a tool. It's not moral. It's not either good or bad. It's just a tool. It's amoral, right? Right. And so in the hands of someone with integrity, with a desire and a heart and intention to bless other people, it can go a long way.
That's right.
Our business supports two that I can remember off the top of my head right now, two 501c3s every single month. Guys, you can't do that unless you make money, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you want the ability to donate to charitable causes, to be radically generous, both from the personal and business standpoint, you got to be okay with making a buck. So anyway.
That's right. And one more thing I just want to add that you triggered this. I love it, Stephen, is we have at our Pendleton location right now, which many of you know is new. We started with 11 employees. I think we're up to 13. We just hired 2 more because we've been busy enough. We needed 2 more, which is so great. And such a testimony to the Lord. But I just want to say, we purchase a lot of sandwiches and local food that's made 2 to 3 times a week for us from a family in Anderson. They have a commercial kitchen. They're amazing. We just found out recently that we're one of their largest orders officially, 2 weeks into our company.
Wow.
They are like emotional when we walk in. This lady, I just gave her a big old squeeze this morning because I bought 75 sandwiches from her and she had just about fell over. I get choked up talking about it, but just watching her go, I feel value because of what Outsider Coffee is doing. She feels value because of what we're doing. We feel value because she's given us the most amazing product. You guys just, it's so good. And they're selling like hotcakes and we can't even keep them in our stand. So we're telling her, is that encouraging to her? It's so encouraging to her. So the cycle here is just almost insane. Like we're not even 2 weeks old and we already have some of these stories and I look forward to many more of them.
I just want to encourage you guys not to go to Pendleton to get Outsider Coffee because if you do, you'll spend the rest of your days frustrated that you can't have that coffee here in Greenville. Mm-hmm. Yes. Aaron and I were in Antigua, Caribbean shout out once again. And literally Aaron's like, I just want an Outsider Coffee right now. It is so good. So in all seriousness, you got to go out there and visit him. It's great coffee. It's super fun. Yeah. All right. So question number 2. And after the second question, we're going to take a break, take a 5-minute breather, and then we'll jump into the last few questions we have. But the second question we had, and this one came up a lot as well, is what are some viable strategies to funding a new business? And so obviously for most people, you have a great business idea, but you know that it requires startup cash. And a lot of people are not in a position with that kind of capital. Maybe you need $50,000, $100,000. And so, that's question number 2. CJ, do you want to start us off on that one as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll come from a couple angles here that Lindsay and I have come from, and it really is dependent on your risk tolerance. It's going to be dependent on a number of literal factors like your credit score. It's going to be determine some of the relationships and connections you have. With that said, traditional routes, obviously the SBA. The SBA is pretty attractive right now. Their interest rates are not amazing, but their terms, Small Business Administration. This is a federal government-backed loan that typically is provided through local banks, a few credit unions, but mostly banks. They have a relatively good process that you walk through with the SBA in order to get funds. What's great about the SBA is once you get approved by the SBA, they want to stick with you. They'll loan up to millions to you. Interest rate right now is hovering around 10%, as I understand it. We have a franchisee that's in the middle of the process. That's why it's fresh for me. That's not an amazing interest rate, but when you understand they're a little bit more risk tolerant, so they're a little bit more willing to take a risk on you by nature. That's kind of nice. Whereas a traditional bank and a traditional bank loan is going to be like, How much experience do you have? Well, how much money have you already made in this? You're thinking, I haven't. That's why I'm coming to you, right? It's so frustrating when these bankers ask these questions. God bless bankers. Okay, no offense. But when they ask these questions, you're just like, what are you smoking? Like, I am here because I haven't done it yet. I want to go do it. Well, how many years in the industry? Well, 0. I mean, that's why I'm here. The SBA has a little bit more of a risk tolerance to say, okay, we understand you haven't done it before. Our interest rate's gonna be a little bit higher because you don't have industry experience, but here's our process. Does that make sense? Am I pushing the SBA? Not necessarily. I just want you to understand that's the process. If you have a good relationship with a local banker, I cannot tell you how valuable that can be. If they already know you, believe in you, trust you, have a sense of your family, have a sense of your ethic, have a sense of your resume, your background, and this was our case in Southern Oregon. We had a bank that took a risk on us when we launched Outsider. They probably should not have on paper. I'm not putting us down. I just mean per their own policy, they definitely were stretching it. But they still took a risk because we had a relationship with this bank for almost 20 years at that point. So if you have that, that's a second avenue. Okay, so those are the traditional avenues. Credit unions can be incredibly favorable. Credit unions have a tendency to offer a better interest rate, but they may require, because it's member owned, most of them anyway, they're all different, but many of them are member owned, they're going to realize that their risk for you is risking their members. And they're gonna consider that, where a bank is not quite the same thing. It's a little different animal. So I would encourage you to look into the traditional routes. Okay, so the non-traditional routes are going to be private loan from friends or family, typically. Okay, there's ways to do that. Of course, there's crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, and there's other ways. And I haven't done that, so I can't speak to that. I don't have experience. I have friends that have, and it seems to have worked for them in a few instances. But we're talking about raising and crowdsourcing maybe, anywhere from let's just say 5,000. I'm making this number up, but let's say anywhere from 5 to 50,000. And if that's your need, that's great, right? But often, in our case, the need was higher. So friends and family then can really potentially become a great asset to you, because who's going to believe in you more in most cases? And sometimes friends and family can be difficult, to be honest with you. And Lindsay and I have got that experience as well. We've got both ends, where they were like, you guys are crazy, right? You're starting the 90th and 91st coffee drive-thrus in one of the most saturated coffee markets in the United States. And good luck. Drive safe. Put your seatbelt on. I hope that works. But we did have a couple of people that stepped up and waved their hand and say, I believe in you. Yes. If you're going to put your heart to this mission, I've seen what you've done in the past. Yes. It's just coffee, but I know what you're going to accomplish. Count me in, and I'm going to write a check. Yeah. And they did.
And CJ, what is so beautiful about what you just said is now they are participating in the mission.
Yes.
And so I see from a kingdom perspective, there's something eternally significant about that too, because it's an extension of grace, of generosity. And obviously not everyone's going to go on the journey with you. And especially with friends and family, you kind of have to toughen up a little bit and realize, like, someone may love you and believe in you, but not see the vision, and that's okay. And so if you're unwilling to hear no, then you don't need to ask.
That's right.
So just be prepared. Most people are going to say no.
That's right.
But that's okay, because some people will. So in my situation, I tried to go the traditional route with a bank. I didn't pursue SBA. And I would tell you guys, if it's still the same, my understanding is most banks these days will not give you a business loan if you haven't been in business for at least 2 years. I'm hearing 3 years now. What is wild in my situation, you guys knew that I was already in the bearing industry with this same bank where we had, I don't want to say how much because this is going on the internet. We had a significant sum of money in our account. We had proven our business was really viable. And I'm like, I'm starting a new one just like it. They wouldn't lend me anything. I had been with that bank for almost 20 years when I asked for this loan. And even with that history, now this was one of the major corporate banks, to be fair. So you might have more luck with a small bank. But even with that history, even being able to see our old business accounts, they still wouldn't do it because in their mind, it was a new business venture. They didn't care that I had industry experience. Yeah. So for me, that kind of backed me into a corner. So what I did, which I absolutely would not recommend, please do not do this, is I put everything on a credit card. So I put $10,000 on a credit card. Now, thankfully, because the business kind of blew up, we paid that off in less than 6 months. But of course, credit card interest rates are ridiculous. There was a stage, I think 2 or 3 months into my business, where I had a cash flow issue, where I was trying to pay vendors, but I was still waiting on payment from customers. And so I had a family member loan me $10,000. I paid him back literally like 3 days later when the payment finally came in. But that was an example where if I had not reached out, I could have been in a world of hurt. Another practical thing with money is what I did up front. In my industry, most customers are on net 30 terms, which means you bill them, you send them an invoice, they get 30 days to pay you back. Usually they'll mail you a check or wire you funds. So in the beginning, everybody was on credit card. I was like, sorry guys, I need the money yesterday. I'll take that 4% hit, I don't care. And so that helped me build capital quick. Could be a potential strategy. But Eric, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, obviously, I'm more in the nonprofit sector, and so I would almost validate the relationship with the banker is important. So we found a local bank here, build relationship with, and it's been going great.
That's
but
cool.
They wouldn't loan us anything for I think it's 2 years of books, and then they have to be happy with that. So, but there are other options for the nonprofit space that aren't bank related. But I want to answer the question slightly differently. Strategy-wise, I was trying to think of all the ideas I've had. The one that got the momentum, the communication of the idea is what helped to create the momentum.
That's so good.
And I just don't know how many of our ideas have great articulation behind them. Like, I think there's ideas in some of us right now that are world-changing, especially for yourself, but you don't have the articulation or the communication behind it that actually connects people to the essence of the idea. So I think for some of you, there's all the practical, which is a huge part of that. But when I think of stuff that I felt like took off for me, from studio to other smaller things in my own life, it's when it was clearly articulated and the essence of it was felt. And so I think that for me, I would highly encourage us as people that have ideas, like I need the elevator pitch version, I need the longer version, and I need the lunch version. It's like you just need to have different dimensions and sizes of being able to communicate and connect people to who you are. The other part of it is if they don't feel you in it, then it's not a viable idea. Yes. So I think they need to feel you. So all the ideas for me that like people have literally funded or supported is like, oh, they got a piece of me. And the ones where it's just more heady, just a bunch of great information, they get some traction, but not as much. The other one I would say is if you can really develop your character as a person, like, oh, I can trust you.
Wow.
Like that right there, I don't know if we champion that enough in the space of funding and being supported and all that. Like you can really develop your character and your trustworthiness, your integrity, and your honesty. It's amazing how many people say, you know what? I just trust you. I'm going to get behind it. I might not like your idea, but I trust you. Yes. And so those are just some thoughts that I have in regards to strategy of developing who you are as a person.
Super good. Did you have? I feel like you were.
Well, it sounds like Eric's a pastor to me. It's so strange. That's so good, Eric. Thank you. It's a great angle. I just say I won't use our business as an example, but I've mentioned this before, and I'm not giving financial advice, but I've been transparent with you guys. I'm going to remind you of one of the things that I said that we did is we had a decent retirement account. I'm just going to say it that way. And we made the very foolish financial advisor choice to cash all of that in, and we did. And that's what we did. Am I saying you should do that? I'm not saying that for 1 ounce of a second. But I'm telling you, we felt convicted. That money was sitting there. To be honest with you, I think I was beginning to look at that as a safety net in a way that was not healthy in my life. And it felt kind of good to get rid of it. And we did. And I don't know that I'd be sitting here had we not done that with that particular fund. Am I saying that's what you should do? I really am not. And I'm not saying that lightly. I don't mean that. But I just mean at some point, through loving yourself, through having a risk tolerance that makes sense to you and your family, you're going to have to make some of these choices. And you're going to be told no. To Eric's point and Stephen's point, you're going to be told no at times. And they're going to say, no. I've had people tell me no crying. Like they're so sad and heartbroken that they're having to have this conversation. It's not like, screw you, no, you're stupid and your idea is terrible and get out of my office. It's not going to be that. It's just going to be not yet or not now. Or it just doesn't meet our policy. As much as I want it to as a banker, Our board of trustees rises above me and they say no. So that's kind of how it goes. I guess the point is you've got to love yourself enough and put yourself in a position. I think a lot to what Eric's saying. And that you're willing to just put yourself out there regardless. Yeah. Okay? In Sparrow Clubs, when we ran that nonprofit that I've talked about, it's kids helping kids in medical need. And I loved, we did have those pitches down, and we still were turned down sometimes. But it's kids help. We are kids helping kids in medical need, and we believe that kids will do heroic things when they have heroic things to do. And we are the nonprofit in the United States that gives kids heroic things to do. When you say that to a banker, they're like, "Tell me more." Like, whoa. Come on. They're like, I'm not dealing with a total rookie here. I'm dealing with somebody that is passionate and can articulate this. That's right. Did we always get told yes, though? Absolutely not. Yeah. Trust me. No. A great fundraising mentor of mine, really who taught me the most about fundraising and helped us be successful, used to say, CJ, your job is to get a no and find out why. Wow. That's really good advice, by the way. And it's not me. Your job is to get a no in whatever you're asking for and then find out why. So emotionally, it takes some of that angst away, that anxiety, and you just know if they're going to say no, I'm just going to ask them why. Can I just ask what was behind that decision? And they're usually more than happy to tell you that. Yes. And you can take that. That is beyond gold, you guys. Yes, that is beyond priceless. And you carry that wisdom into the next conversation. And over time, with momentum, you start to find yourself having some successes that maybe you would not have otherwise.
I love that. So we're about to wrap up, but even as you were sharing about Sparrow Clubs, I'm like, that's mission.
Yeah.
And that's a mission. I regret not being able to be a part of that, because I'm like, kids helping medical, they'll do heroic things. Like I literally right now I'm like leaning in, like I want to just stop the podcast and talk about Sparrow Club.
Let's go.
So, but that's the power of mission, you guys. And I think if you can combine that heart with the articulation that Eric's talking about with the character, you make yourself a very convincing candidate for funding.
Thanks for listening to Mavericks and Pioneers podcast, where we empower current and aspiring entrepreneurs to take meaningful action towards their dreams. We'll see you next time.